These are the people that help me, and they can definitely help you guys too, so please check them all out. Hey people, today I'm here to talk about the horizontal lines you get across some of your prints due to the peel force, due to the suction on some prints where you have cross sections which are kind of large. So first we're going to dive into a tiny little bit of math, not much. When you go to print and you look at a print, you have a cross section. It shows you what a layer is going to print if you're in your slicer. So let's just do a little quick math. If you have a section of a print that's printing that's about this big, which is a 25 millimeter base, the area that's printing would be pi r squared. You remember your math from hopefully 5th grade or whatever it was, or 6th grade. At 25 it would be 12.5 squared. Let's just round that to, say, 150 times pi. Let's round that to 3. So you have to say 450 millimeters for the amount of surface that's printing at once here. When you go just to a 30 millimeter base, then you're at 15. So you're at 15 squared, 225 times 3. You're at almost 700 millimeters. So this, even though it's only a tiny little bit bigger, is almost double the surface area when it's printing. Okay, double the surface area when you're printing. The way I'm not going to get into this formula to calculate the peel force, but scientists have and mathematicians have figured it out. The surface area in that formula is run by a power of 4. So if this is almost double the surface area of this, it's 16 times the peel force, 16 times the suction being created. Okay, just from that little difference. So imagine you go to a 50 millimeter cross section of a model that's printing, which I've done on some models. At 50, you're at 25, right? Is your radius. So you've got 625, which is the 25 times 25 squared, times the pi, times, let's use 3. You're at almost between 18 and 1900 millimeters of surface area here. So you went from, you went from close to 400 to 1900. So this is almost 5 times this amount. So that means in terms of peel force, it's like 600 times more peel force for the cross section like this than like this. I mean, I won't say the difference is astronomical, that's too big a word, but the difference is massive. So you can understand now why on some of your bigger prints that have big cross sections, you're seeing these lines. And a lot of people, so I'm not talking about Z-wobble, where you go line because something's wrong with your Z-axis. And I'm not talking about when you have a bad FEP, or maybe part of your FEP is bad, or the tension isn't right and you get a line. I'm just talking about pure peel force being so great that it moves, that it creates this line. So anyway, I just want to go into a little bit of math so you understand what I'm talking about. When I talk about this huge peel force, this suction, you need to understand a little bit of the math behind it so you can understand how great the force is we're actually talking about. Also into that mix, the thicker your resin, it actually contributes into that formula as well in terms of the peel force. So the thicker the resin you're using also greatly multiplies the peel force. And that's one of the reasons resin, I think in cold temperature, gets a little thicker. And you always hear me harping, if you're on the Facebook page, I'm always asking people, what's the temperature in your room? The lower temperature causes the resin to become more viscous. It just simply multiplies your peel force. That's not good. So that's why we always want our resin warm. We want it shaken and mixed properly. And then when you look at a model, when you go to orient the model, look, there's always going to be one part of the model, no matter how you orient the model, there's going to be one part that has the greatest amount of material printing at once on a cross section. But you want to do what you can to minimize that, especially if it looks like there's going to be a lot of suction forces. So for instance, and this doesn't apply to printing a base straight on the bed, that's always fine. But let's say you want to print your bases off the bed. The reason everyone tells you angle it is what I'm talking about here. So if you just lift this off and print it flat, you're getting this whole thing as suction force, right? Which we talked about, a huge amount. If you go like this, the biggest cross section of this model is only about maybe 2 or 3 millimeters wide by about 50 millimeters long. So the amount of surface area that's printing at once is minuscule compared to if you print it like this. So that's why angling cuts down on the amount of material being printed at once, cuts down your peel or suction forces. Now with minis, which are shaped all different ways, sometimes angling it different ways doesn't matter. And that's why you'll see when I do my minis, I do them at only usually about 5% tilted back. Because if you tilt it back 45% and it's thick, you still get a huge cross section at some point. So a lot of times tilting it doesn't give you a smaller cross section. So people go around saying that, but it doesn't really make sense. Tilting doesn't always work. Depends on the shape of your model, right? In fact, tilting some models could increase the peel force on them depending on how the model is shaped. So you don't just automatically tilt. This is why you have to use your brain and look at the model itself in the slicer, see where the biggest cross section is, and is there anything you can do to minimize it. So the other way you can get rid of these lines if you're having them, and again, we're only talking about lines caused by suction, by the peel force. So you want lower viscosity resin. And the other thing you can do is you can add supports right where you see the biggest amount of material printing. If you add supports around it, you will stabilize that section. So even though you have massive peel forces there, it won't create the line. So you're basically your two options for getting rid of these lines if you have them on a print. Lower viscosity on your resin will help, or just support the model in that area. So anyway, this is a short video. I just wanted to give you that background so you understand what we're talking about. We're going to jump into the slicer and look at a model where I got a line because I was trying to keep the model pristine. I was printing it up for one of the best miniature painters in the world, James Wappel. The guy's won 12 Golden Demons, and I think he's only won 12 because he doesn't like to enter competitions because he'd probably have 100 Golden Demons if he entered. Anyway, I was printing for him, and I didn't want to put any supports even on the thickest section of the model, as I'll show you, because I was trying to keep the model totally pristine for him. I didn't want him to have to deal with any damage at all on the model there. So it printed out, and you'll see I had the line. So what I did the next time, I actually just reprinted it again in the hopes that the peel force wouldn't affect it. And the second time it actually printed out fine, even though I didn't really change anything. If I'd gotten the line again, then I would have done what I'm telling you, which I would have added some supports to that region to try to stabilize, but I really didn't want to do that. So anyway, I just want you to understand where the lines come from. Let's jump into the slicer and look at the model I'm talking about. Then we'll look at the pictures, and hopefully this will help you guys have some better prints. Thanks. So let's look at the print. Hey, looks like it came out pretty good at first glance. I mean, looks almost like a perfect print. But wait. We always have to look very closely, either under magnifier or high-res photo. And here we go. You see that there's a line, a horizontal line that runs across the whole print. Everywhere those arrows are pointing, that's all on the same level. So let's dive into Chitubox and see why at that level we have that line. So here's the model in the slicer. You can see it's pretty big. I had blown this up to 200%, actually I'm sorry, 160% of normal size, because James Wappel wanted to paint it with oil, so he asked me to print it bigger for him. And if you look right about where that line is, where I'm highlighting now, that looks to be between the leg, the tush, the arm, the parts of the wings, the most material printing in the entire print. So it makes sense that that's where I had the suction force problem that created a line. So let's go down. Let's deconstruct here. You see there's not a lot of material printing on any of these layers. This all looks fine. Leg still looks fine. Now here the wings are coming in, so there's a little more suction, a little more. Now you have two legs. Now look right about here. This is now the quote-unquote thickest part of the print where you have the most material printing at once. And it was this suction, and it might have also been because most of those suction forces are in one corner, might also have caused this. So this might have been good if this part might have been centered. So again, go down, you're looking there, it's like the base is that part of the leg. As you go up, you're more than double the print area and double the volume printing. So we know that means 16 times the forces just from one transition to the other. Suddenly there's a lot more suction force for this whole part. Then once you get above that, this part right here could have potentially given me a line also because there's a decent amount of surface area that's printing all at once, but thankfully it didn't. And then as you go up, everything gets fine. There's not that much peel force there. So that's it. I just wanted to show you quickly where in the print you might look for that kind of thing. So again, hope you learned something. Please like, please subscribe, please check out my other videos, and happy 3D printing, guys. And you're looking at the finished print, by the way.